As I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. Gently rapping. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." "It's better not be one of your friends. Come in."
All I'm saying is that whenever you're in a fight, you will always need extra power. And a bomb is an essential piece of power. And as I have always said, I love power, but as an artist I love it. I love to draw out its chords and harmonies as a musician does a violin. And why not let an artist express himself fully?
Sure, I have nothing wrong against a fellow expressing himself. Yet why express in the form of violence?
You are a sissy.
Silence.
I am no sissy. I know the terrors of violence. I helped create one.
Yet you still criticize me on my liking of bombs.
Silencio. Please, everybody, take a seat. It's a pleasure to finally meet you three.
Thank you, Poe, for inviting me.
Yes, I must thank you as well, Poe. I've always been a lover of the arts, and I've always wanted to meet the great painter, Gentileschi.
The pleasure is the same for me. I couldn't wait to meet Mr. Bonaparte over here, although his temper is quite short.
You couldn't wait? You were just arguing. More like you wanted someone to argue with, Dr. Feynman.
I have to agree with the lady. Did you just want to know what the great military leader thought of your atomic bomb?
Of course not. I don't revel in being one of the contributors to a destructive force of nature. You see, I'm curious on how we as human beings view the world.
Well, why is that?
It's just all the small things we do. Why do we do them? I'll give you an example. Every day we brush our teeth. At least, I hope so. If you ask any doctor or dentist why we brush our teeth, they'll simply reply with, it prevents cavities. But do we have solid evidence that brushing one's teeth prevents cavities? Imagine people all around the world brushing their teeth in one great circadian rhythm.
I certainly know brushing stops cavities. I brush my teeth every day, and I had some of the whitest teeth of anyone I knew.
I saw some of the worst teeth I've ever seen during my time in Scotland. They must never brush over there. And the ones that do, well, they must not do a really good job.
Scotland. That was one of the places I never conquered.
You could have conquered it for all I care. It was appalling. After my father left and my mother died of tuberculosis, I went to live with the Allens, the folks from which I get my middle name. They took me to live with them in London, although I had a year of education in Scotland. Actually, during my time in London, I saw some of your paintings, Miss Gentileschi.
Ah, yes, London. There you probably saw my self-portrait, or the Allegory of Peace in the Arts under the English crown, in the House of Windsor. There I helped my father. Of course, I had to stay in the English court, but even though London was very beautiful, Italy was my home.
London. That was another place I never conquered. But I did conquer Italy, and I was raised like an Italian. I thought the country got a little bit more beautiful after I became its ruler.
Italy? My Italy was taken over by a tyrant? Oh, Italy. Place I left, came back, left again, and never returned. How I miss you so.
Yes, I had been banished from Italy as well. Now I'll forever remember its beauty under Napoleon.
What a shame.
Yes, I had only been banished because I was trying to expand my greatness to the rest of the world. And it is truly a shame.
Au contraire, Montferry. I think you should have been dethroned. Why must there always be some power-hungry man in control?
And who should lead? Most certainly not somebody like you.
I wouldn't care to lead. Leadership positions never appealed to me.
May we please not start that again? Gentlemen, please, let's keep things civil.
Well, Poe, you said you got your middle name from your foster family, the Allens?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always had a fascination with middle names myself. I had my first wife change her first name to her middle name, Josephine. It gave her name a nice ring. What?
Well, I don't think this could keep going in a civil matter, so let's talk about war.
I was actually in the military for a couple of years myself. I wanted to get away from my family, especially my father. I didn't have any way to bring in money though, so joining the military was preferable to being outcast on the street. I was only 18 at the time, however, so I had to lie about my age, along with use a pseudonym. I was known as Edgar A. Perry. Actually, during my time in the military, I released my first collection of poems, although it received no attention. In a matter of 2 years, I reached the highest rank I could from my experience. I was Sergeant Major for artillery before I became bold with it. I wanted to go to West Point instead and train. My contract still had a couple years on it, though, so I told my commanding officer that I had fabricated certain details so I could join the military. He agreed to let me go early if I could get my father's approval, which wasn't easy. John Allen and I never saw eye to eye on anything, but after his wife's death, he softened up a bit and agreed to sign my release so I could go to West Point. I became bold with it after a few months, though, and purposefully got myself discharged.
War? I never really went through a true war, but I fought through growing up in a man's world. Growing up, I never had a mother, just a father. Well, I also had a teacher. Tassie was his name, and he taught me perspective. On some occasions, he would corner me in my room, and when he did, he would assault me. My war field was a courtroom, and my war lasted 7 long months before Tassie was sent to jail. So I was still traumatized from the incident. So I took all my emotions and created Judas slaying Holofernes. In the biblical story, you see, Judas' husband was slain. So, filled with anger, she went to the tent of Holofernes and used all her strength to decapitate him. Then, without being noticed, Judith and her handmaiden leave the tent with the head in the basket.
I was in the military nearly all my life. From a young age, I had been in the most prestigious of military schools in Paris, the School of Brienne, a branch of the School of Paris. Unfortunately, like today, it was the teacher's fault, and I had graduated near the bottom of my class. But, thankfully, my country saw just how great I was, and I was promoted to second lieutenant right out of the academy. And after 9 long years, I was able to become a major brigadier general after fighting and winning, of course, in the siege of Toulon. Then, unfortunately, I still had some defeats. These were mostly of others' fault and not really my own. My first defeat was at Caldiero, and my second, and the one where just everybody did horribly, was at Waterloo. These were few in number, though, and I slowly became the man who I am today, the only man who could ever have so much power over Europe. Emperor Napoleon, Emperor of France, King of Spain, and Conqueror of Italy, and many more.
Besides the Manhattan Project, I never really took part in any military organization. I don't understand why people indulge in such honors and awards. When I was in high school, there was a group called the Arista. The Arista was simply a group of students that did well in school. Everyone wanted to be part of the Arista. In my freshman year, I was accepted to be part of this group. It was then that I discovered that at their meetings, they sat around discussing who else was worthy enough to join our illustrious group. And this kind of thing bothers me. To be part of a group that sits around and discusses who else was worthy enough to join this group that we are. And it was how my papa raised me. The same thing happened at the Royal Society in London. The whole idea was rotten.
If you don't have honors or awards, then how do you decide who's best for what job? How do you decide, and that must be decided, to decide who would be best to do what? An example, I was the most awarded leader, so I was best to lead France.
I don't care for honors because that's how I was raised. I do my work in physics because I enjoy getting a kick out of it.
But I was raised and shown that honors and awards are important. If you don't have them, then I wouldn't have been the man that I am today. And you probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do your research or become who you are.
And that's my point. I didn't care if I became famous. I did my work in physics because I enjoyed it, not for some hodgepodge of medals.
Well, awards were always helpful for me. I was the first writer to try to make their living entirely off of writing. So I didn't have any money besides what my stories and poems brought in. If I would win a distinction and get some money along with it, I wasn't going to turn it down. My story, The Gold Bug, won me $100, which I'm not complaining about.
I was the first one to be accepted into the Academy of Design in Italy. That was the only distinction I ever had in my life. However, I made my money by having patrons. Patrons like King Charles I, Cosimo de' Medici, and a nobleman of Verona.
Oh, merde. I just realized I have a meeting with some Italian nobles. I'm sorry to take such greatness from the room, but I must be going.
Well, I hate to have this end so early. I'll be out of town for a few days, but when I get back, I'm sure we can meet up again.
Well, back to lecturing, I suppose. Too bad our time together, especially with you, Napoleon, was so short.
Then I must be leaving as well. My new patron will be expecting me.